Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? It is another Wednesday, and we are back to magnify another HR voice. My name is Julie Turney, and I am your host. If you have never been to a Magnifying HR Voices session before, I want to welcome you and thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. And today we are going to have another interesting, invigorating conversation. Magnifying HR Voices is about just that, talking to HR professionals about things that are happening in the HR space, but in a way that appeals to us to be more mindful about our own mental health and self care, and sharing stories of other HR professionals and why they do what they do and how they do what they do. If you are joining us today, please let me know in the chat. Show me some love. Give me some thumbs up. Give me some hearts. Let me know that you're loving Magnifying HR Voices. And then also let me know where you are joining us from today. Are you joining us from the Caribbean, from Europe, from the US? Where are you chiming in from today? The question that I always ask my audience for you as HR professionals, how are you doing? What are you doing? Have you slept well? Have you ate well? Have you been taking care of your mind and being more mindful with yourself? My guest today is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, Jolene King, fellow Barbadian, living in the UK. And I'm so happy to have Jolene here today to have this conversation about well-being and what happens now that we return to work. What does that look like for us as HR professionals? How are we taking care of employee well-being? But ultimately, how are we taking care of ourselves as HR professionals? Or are we going back to the rut of how things were before COVID? So I'm going to bring up Jolene and we're going to get started. Hi,
Hello.
Jolene. How,
Hi, Julie.
how are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really, really well. I am so glad to have you here today for this conversation, and I really look forward to, engaging you, sharing your thoughts and your insights as to what well-being in the workplace is looking like for us as HR professionals, and we start to return to work. I know a lot of us have been very mindful about, our employees and well-being. I'm seeing the data of where well-being sits in a lot of HR reports in terms of what are some of the biggest requirements that HR professionals are seeing in terms of what will be needed to prioritize as we return to work. And I'm still seeing well-being ranked very, very low, which
Uh-huh.
worries me a
Uh-huh.
lot. And that's whether that's well-being for employees or well-being and for us as HR, because we are employees as well. uh,
Yes.
I am still seeing that it is ranked very, very low. So I'm looking forward to this conversation of you sharing your insights, as always, as an employee well-being advocate, and recognizing that we as HR, as employees, I'm really intrigued to get your insights on this.
Mhm.
So I'm going to do what I normally do to kick things off, which is jump off the screen so that you can share with everyone your HR origin story. And then we will start our conversation as people start to roll in. Tell us where you're joining us from, people, and also show us some love and let us know if you're appreciating this topic that we are about to talk on today. And if there's any questions that you have for Jolene or myself, please feel free to share them. Jolene, over to you.
Okay, my HR origin story. So I did my first master's. So I was at graduate school at Florida Institute of Technology in industrial organizational psychology. And going around the room in our second year, everybody's like, well, what do you plan to do next? And I said, I want to be an HR consultant, not having any inkling of what HR was. But it sounded good to me, and I wanted to be a consultant. So life took a different turn because we're talking 9/11 and the aftermath. So when I was intending to stay in the US and get work experience, that didn't work out. Returned to Barbados, and then less than 2 years after, I migrated to the UK, thinking I was going to be a chartered occupational psychologist. That did not go according to plan, and I got into HR because I wanted to be an HR consultant. Now, this is almost 20 years I've been in HR. So I started at the very, very bottom in a role that no longer exists, worked my way up, and I'm now at the business partner management level in HR. But I've developed some specialty areas, including absence management, health and well-being, mental health, and that is what has led me to this part today. So my HR story has been quite interesting.
Thanks for sharing, Jolene, and keeping it nice and succinct. um, I, so I think it's really important for people to know, like, when you start from the bottom and work your way up in your HR career. Obviously, there are lots of things that you would have experienced as an HR professional in your career that would have probably taxed you, challenged you. When was the first time that you experienced HR burnout for yourself?
At an organization that I should not have experienced burnout, but it was poor management. It was an extremely toxic environment. I experienced racism, bullying, harassment, victimization to the point where I developed work related stress and had somatic symptoms. So we're talking muscle pains, joint pains. I used to wake up vomited, my hair fell out. It still hasn't grown back. So it's permanent hair loss because of it, and just a lot of realistic work demands. It was a horrible place to work. So that was burnout because my body was tapped out. So when I talk about now, when I say things like, if you are not in a good workplace, leave, plan your exit strategy, I am speaking from personal experience. And that was 2013. From 2011 to 2014. It was awful. It was just awful.
And it wasn't that long ago either. And I guess that leads segues into, the start of our questions for today, in terms of, based on what you went through, like, what made you decide then, as you niche down in HR, to focus on employee well-being?
One, the personal work experience I had, I don't want anybody to ever have to go through that again. And also, being an HR professional, I've worked with managers who, they mean well, but they just don't know how to manage people in the workplace and help them to improve their well-being. So I realized I needed to have more experience and knowledge in order to guide others. So that is how I ended up getting more training and qualifications in order to do what I do now.
Right. And what was your journey like in terms of healing? What was that like for you?
Uh, Therapy. It was so traumatic. It took me 2 years to get over that experience. So I didn't shake it till like 2016. So we're talking 2 years afterwards. I would still get anxiety when I move into a new environment, and I wouldn't be able to trust people. And I was always thinking, because it was a big blame culture as well. So I was always thinking I had to take the fall if I made a mistake. And we all know that you make mistakes in the workplace. We're not perfect. It just changed my perception of people. And even now, there are things I always do to cover my back because I've been burnt so much in the past.
Yeah. What are some of those triggers for you?
When I realize, because I'm really good now at reading when people aren't genuine. So when I notice people aren't authentic or genuine, I give them a wide berth. Because chances are, when push comes to shove, they will not fall on their own sword. So I have to make sure that I am secure and covered in prayer.
Yes. Oh, I like that. Secure and covered in prayer. So it's not just secure and covered in your role, but covered in prayer. And I think that that's really important.
Yep.
You said something that shook me a little, because just this morning I was in a coaching session with a client, and she's now moving on to a new organization. But one of the things that she said, that we discussed in previous coaching session, was not letting the trauma of your current organization follow you into your new organization, because a lot of times, because we've had such a traumatic experience in one organization, as we look to get a new role, I always advise I always advise my clients, whenever you go into a new role, take at least a 2-week break, which gives
That's
you
right.
enough time to practice some mindfulness, learning to forgive yourself for what
Yes.
happened in the past
Oh, yes.
organization, giving
Mm.
yourself enough time to heal and get closure from your previous trauma, so that you don't carry it into the new one. And one of the
Mm.
things that she said to me today that really prodded me was, she said she's been a coach, she's been a punching bag for most of her HR career. So she struggles with letting go and forgiving herself.
Mm.
How And this impacts your well-being.
Of
Um,
course it does.
what advice would you give to, I mean, outside of, like, I give my recommendations, but what advice would you give to that, in terms of, you're dealing with past trauma of your organization, moving into a new organization, how do you not carry that trauma? I always remember the analogy that Tyler Perry gave in one of his plays as Medea, when he talks about how women who have been treated badly by a man don't know, struggle with dealing with a good man, and you can't see a good man afar off at all, because you've never known what it was like to be treated good by a good man. And for us as HR professionals, we may struggle with being treated well in an organization, because we've
Yep.
never experienced that
Yeah.
in our HR career. So we don't know how to deal with a good organization, because we've been a punching bag for so long. But you have to let go and forgive in order to move on. What would you, anything you want to add to that? Any
It's
thoughts you
it's
have on that?
it's funny that you say that, because the organization I went to after that, it was a blessing. It was probably the best manager I ever had. I used to travel for work, driving a new hired car every week. I flew for my job. I used to get covered for expenses. I had all this work equipment. Everybody was fine. And I was thinking to myself, you have to go through the struggle to get blessings.
Mm-hmm.
So just for anybody who's going through that, just remember everything for a time.
And
Be
it's,
kind to yourself. Remember who you are. It might take time, and tap into your support networks, because sometimes you can't see the wood from the trees, because I could not see the wood from the trees. But I just needed people to ride with me and see me through it. And if you are spiritual in any way, tap into that, because that is what will get you through. It is only for a time.
yeah.
And God does not look. I was raised by a grandmother. She always said, God does not put more on
What
you
are
than
you
you
doing?
can bear.
Yes, thank you to those
Build your
grandmothers.
resilience. Build your resilience. And that is about the ability to bounce back in the face of adversity. Get your support networks and shore up yourself. As I said before, cover yourself in prayer, because once you step out of that bad environment, the
Mm-hmm.
good environments will come. But
Yes.
remember who you are. Do not lose sight of who you are and what you want. And as you said, take some time for yourself and
Mm-hmm.
reconnect with your spirit,
Yes.
because toxic environments will break your spirit.
Oh, yes.
But we are bigger than this,
We
and we
definitely
will get through it.
are. Oh, absolutely. And we deserve it. We deserve
Exactly.
to be in good organizations that appreciate us, that value
Mm.
our worth. And sometimes, because we've been punched and thrown about for so long, ignored, mistreated in so many ways for so long, we forget what it's
How
like.
good we are.
Yes. We lose ourselves. We lose
Yes.
ourselves. Because that's another thing. Like, and I know we've kind of gone a little bit off topic, but I feel like this is important. Like, because I feel like sometimes you are so mistreated, you forget your worth, you forget your
Yeah,
value,
that's right.
especially when you have leaders in organizations who have no respect for HR, and they're making decisions, very bad decisions that are impacting, leaving you to clean up the mess that's
I
happening on
was
the
just about to
background.
say that. They think we specialize in waste management, Julie. That's a
I
professional way of saying it. Waste management.
I know the Barbados Water Authority recently added the garbage tax onto their bill. The government made that decision. And but I'm telling you, I am not a specialist in waste management at all. I'm
Me
here to do
neither.
one thing and one thing only, and that's make an impact on the people who I work with and serve. And
Right.
if that does not include picking up the pieces when you make bad decisions, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what we end up doing a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's try to get back on track a bit, because but I felt like it was important for us to take that soapbox.
Yeah.
What challenges have you faced throughout your career as an HR professional with prioritizing your self-care and your well-being?
Mm.
What are some of the challenges, especially as a obviously leading up to burnout, you've had challenges with self-care
I
and
told you
well-being.
about that. That's
Yes,
right.
yes,
So I did talk about the poor management because that's one of the leading causes of work-related stress and the toxic environment. But unrealistic work demands, because we're serving people who do not understand what HR does
no,
or process or procedure. So they think everything can happen in 5 minutes. It doesn't
yes,
work that way.
mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about how we counter that. And then there's a lot of conflicting priorities. We all be juggling a lot of hats. We gotta
Yes,
be the psychologist, we gotta be the mentor, we gotta be the peacemaker, we gotta be this, we gotta be that. Oh, come on. There are only
yeah,
so many hours in the day, and there's only so much capacity. And because they always see HR as a support function and not important, HR
mm,
departments and HR teams are usually small. So the
yeah,
ratio to employees is large. So then
yes,
you got an increased workload. There is only so much work that you can achieve. And that's just the business as usual. If we're
yeah,
talking about project work, who's going to do all of it? So
mm-hmm.
those are the types of things that I have encountered. And you find yourself cutting into your lunch periods, working longer, and then it's kind of like it builds up because
Yes,
it's not sustainable.
it's
So
not.
then, because there's so much going on in your brain, you can't switch off at night. So it's cutting
No,
into your night sleep. Then you're waking up in the morning. I remember times I used to be emailing myself to remind myself of things to do the next day. What is
yeah,
that about?
yeah,
So, those are the challenges I used to face.
right,
I'm at this stage in my career now where that does not happen.
right.
When I'm off the clock, I'm off the clock.
Okay.
I mentioned in one of our sessions professional detachment.
Yes.
So let me just explain to the listeners what that is.
Mm-hmm.
You do the job, remove all emotion from it. People may think you're being cold and callous, but it's about separating the personal from professional. Get the job done, and that's it. And then you can sleep at night because you're not emotionally connected to it.
Yes.
Because when you have to go in and make people's positions redundant, you can't have feelings. You are there to complete a task.
Mm-hmm.
So learn professional detachment. It will save your life, HR
Yeah.
professionals. It will.
Absolutely. I see Gail, regular to our show, making some comments here. But Gail says we also act as the fire officers with superpowers, crisis management,
Mm,
steroids. It is definitely tough, Gail. I could not agree with you more. Hi, and thanks for joining us. I see Sylvia from San Francisco. I see a few more people chiming in, so please let us know where you are joining us from today and show some love. Let us know that you are
I
appreciating and
got
love this
I
conversation.
got one. I want to answer Gail. Of course you can. I am very diligent and passionate about what I do. But by all means, yes, you can professionally
Oh,
detach because
yes.
you are a professional. You get the
Mhm.
job done and you do it well. You do right by everyone. You follow process, procedure, and you tie it up.
Yes. But you
But
also,
getting involved is
uh-huh.
when you go home crying because you had to dismiss somebody.
Yes.
Well, they deserve to be dismissed because you followed process. So you'd have to leave it, get the job done, and leave it.
But
That's it.
I will add to that, Gail, and Jolene, and I will say, like, very early in my HR career, when I was dealing with things like terminations, redundancies, or dealing with a death in service or things like that,
Yes.
you find the adrenaline to deal with it in the moment, but
Hmm.
after that, it's what you do to process after that. And a lot of
Yes.
times we as HR professionals, we don't process. We just go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's when we start to dehumanize ourselves and we start to dehumanize our role. There's a difference between dehumanizing yourself and professional detachment.
Correct.
Right? So you may do a termination of someone. You know that person doesn't deserve to be terminated, but you just can't get past this manager who has blinked focus on letting this person go for whatever reason. And you may be so frustrated in your frustration. I've been there, and there are times when I've gone home and just cried. Or after I've done the termination, I've taken the longest lunch hour I could possibly take.
Yes. I go missing for an hour.
Yes, because you just need that moment to, take that moment for yourself. And a lot of us as HR, that's how we survive. That's how we get through it. That's how we get through those difficult moments. Or we come home and we cry. Or we go in the bathroom and we cry and we get all those slubbers out of the way. We wipe it all away. We clean it all up. We freshen up our makeup and we go. So
that's it, Gail.
Yeah.
You got to draw the line, professional and personal. This is not worth my tears. I'm here to get this job done, get the job done, and move on. That's it.
Exactly. But you got to do whatever it takes for you in order to heal.
To stay sane.
Yes.
Right.
So don't just put it in the back of your mind, which is why a lot of times now I have clients who are going through the mindfulness phase of their coaching journey. And I get clients who call me and they go, Julie, we purposely take a 2-week break, and they go, Julie, I don't know what brought these tears, but I've been crying for the last 3 days. You don't know what brought them? Of course you know what brought them.
Carrying the burden. Yes, that's what brought it.
One client who said to me she cried for 7 days straight, and she said it was something that happened 3 years ago. But she can remember it very vividly now through mindfulness. And that's what I'm talking about. You need to be able to deal with those things.
Something, Julie, that HR professionals need to recognize, and this is something if you're actually studying or even if you haven't, is self-reflection and introspection is very important in your career. When you deal with things, take a pause and look at what you have learned, what you could have done differently, and what you will take for the future with everything. Not just the big things, the little things as well, because it helps you to become a better professional. And that is how you deal with it. You process it and then you move on. And any therapist will tell you that you have to process things and then move on. Because if you carry that load and that burden, it gets heavier. And then you start crying for the 7 days, as Julie said.
Yeah.
About stuff that you can barely remember.
And when it becomes truly vivid in your mind, then you got to sit in those feelings. A lot of times we don't want to do that, but you need to sit in your feelings. Feel the situation. Feel how it makes you feel. Accept how it makes you feel. And then look at the outcome of what you're going to do outside of that, But you said something about your self-care and well-being, and when you recognize like you weren't prioritizing those things. So now that you're prioritizing self-care, Jolene, for yourself and your well-being, what are some of the things that you do to mindfully take care of yourself as an HR professional?
All right. So when I wake up in the morning, my first 5 minutes are my quiet time, and I check in with myself. When I say a check in, I don't be like, "Ooh, we're hurting today," because you reach a certain age and everything starts to hurt.
It hurts.
It is checking in. I rank myself on a score of 1 to 10, 1 being the absolute worst, 10 being euphoric. And whatever that score is, I ask myself, why is it that score? I check all sorts of aspects within my life to see why it is. And then I start moving through my day. And I check in with myself several times throughout the day, and I check in just before I go to sleep. I practice deep breathing, which is part of my mindfulness, because that's the easiest thing I can do. And I love my deep breathing because
nothing like a deep breathing.
Exactly, because often when we are stressed, we actually hold our breath.
Yes, we do.
Breathing is so important. 10 deep breaths can lull you off to sleep, believe it or not, but you have to practice it. So that's what I do. I go for walks. I do 4 days in the gym. because I need to get my body moving, because self-care is not just about what you're doing presently, it is what you are doing for your future self.
Yourself. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm
Oh
doing.
Lord, say
I
that again.
aim
Say
for
that again, Jolene. Say that again. Like,
self-care is not just about what you are doing for the present, but what you are doing for your future self.
mm, mm.
I
I
aim
felt like
for
it before.
regular and quality sleep. So it's not just about 8 hours. It is
Yeah.
about quality sleep and getting that deep sleep when,
Mm.
because I'll sleep through anything. I've slept through earthquakes. So
Wow.
that's just me. I like to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I schedule everything, even my gym times, break times, everything. I am very strict with what I do and when. I set very clear boundaries and I maintain them. And I can tell you no. And I know how to say no in professional and personal. Professionally, learn how to say no without causing offense. So you could simply say, I do not have capacity. And don't add on the right now or currently, because then people will come back and think they can ask again.
Yeah.
No means no. Um, I've accepted I can't do it all. Even though I'm very efficient and diligent and organized and sometimes, but then I have to tap myself and say, listen, this is it. You're about to be tapped out. So stop.
Yep.
And one thing that I am learning to do because of the help of my family, taking one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Multitasking does not work. Research has shown it does not work. Human beings are to focus on one task,
Okay.
get it done, and move on to the next thing.
Yep.
Running stuff concurrently, it doesn't work. And then, of course, I use my networks as support. I have a really good support system with my family and close friends. And my brother is actually here. He's actually made a comment. So, yeah, that's how I take care of myself.
Uh-huh.
And I have a tub and I take soaks in my tub. I don't care what nobody say if they think it's for babies. That is how I relax my muscles. Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
because I am older now and everything hurts. So that's my self care. It's different for different people, but that is what I do
Yes.
because self care really is about positive and healthy habits. It is whatever feeds your soul. So, whatever is good for you, whatever makes you feel good and is not harmful to others, by all means. Look, I bought a coloring book. Let me tell you, I got some
I love
coloring
my color.
pens
I
because
love
I
my
don't have the
color.
patience for knitting or crochet. So, not
No.
me and that. So
Yes.
coloring, I'm into that. I
Yes.
volunteer my time. I'm a girl guide unit leader, and that gives me so much joy. There are
Uh-huh.
all sorts of things I'm doing, and it is about a lifestyle. It's not something you do every once in a while.
No.
And listen, as soon as it is safe to travel, trust and believe. I'm
Yeah.
getting on planes because I like to travel.
Wow.
So that's my self care. But for everybody, it is different because everybody has different interests. But make sure you take care of yourself. And I try to be a healthy eater because I got a bit of a sweet tooth. But for the most part, I drink a lot of water,
Yes.
fruits and vegetables, that sort of thing. Because
Yes.
I only got one body, I only have one house. And
Yes.
if I don't take care of this house, where am I going to live?
Absolutely. You said so many gems. You've laid so many gems there in terms of your own personal well-being and self-care. And I ticked a lot of boxes in terms of there are a lot of those things that I love to do too. Like I am so enjoying being mindful in the morning. Those first 10-15 minutes when I get up in the morning and clicking on that mindfulness app. I use Calm.
Yes, I have it as well.
I love Calm, and sometimes I repeat certain things. So, like, I am now in the process of repeating the 7 days of
Yes.
mindfulness with Tamara Levitt. I
Uh-huh.
love it. So this morning we were focusing on the brain, recognizing your brain inside your head, giving yourself peace and
Uh-huh.
calm. And I actually lied down for this one, and it was pretty good. Although my
It
back did
is.
hurt me when I got up, but I love absolutely. I
Listen, I
absolutely love
I
the
recently did a 12-week winter wellness program and it took you through everything. And
time.
afterwards I was like, this is the sort of thing you have to do for yourself. Because it wasn't just about the education, because I'm always looking for knowledge when it comes to employee well well-being and mental health and everything
Yes.
else. But for me, it was like understanding the importance of sleep
Yes.
and all sorts of different things.
Mhm.
And I keep saying to people, we really have to do a better job of taking care of
We do.
ourselves, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anybody else, you know.
Cannot. We cannot. It's the same thing I say all the time. You cannot give from an empty cup. And as HR professionals, we are constantly in the space of giving. So if you are giving from an empty cup, what are you giving on? You're giving on fumes, which
Fumes.
eventually
And
will
then the
evaporate.
fumes run out, and then everybody's burnt
Exactly.
out, and then that's the end of that.
Exactly. You can't give quality service on fumes. You just cannot do it.
That's right, Trisha. Let's talk about that balance, that
Yes.
work-life balance and balance in general. I did an
It's
article a couple years ago that's on my website about balance, because we trying to do too much. HR
mhm.
professionals do a lot anyway. And then we
Yeah.
have personal lives to deal with.
Hmm.
Something is going to drop if we don't find the balance.
Absolutely. Now, Gail had something to say earlier, and I know it was
Mm,
long, but she said, I wish HR would consider hosting informal lunch and learn sessions for employees in the organization so people understand truly how challenging but valuable the role really is. People blame HR for everything, which is true, but that's because they honestly don't know any better. Does that make sense?
it
How
does.
can we get the team to be more empathetic to HR? How?
Well, some organizations do have lunch and learn, but listen, HR has to get better at building business relationships, because
Mhm.
when you build relationships, people actually get to understand what it is you do. My senior management knows what I do because I built really good relationships with them, and they're
Yep.
always like, Jolene, I can do what you do. I said, I know, but I do it anyway
Yep.
because I built those relationships. So it is about, they understand what the workload is, they understand what the challenges are. So go there and build those relationships in the workplace. Don't hide in the HR office. And when people see you, they run in because they think HR come in as the police. Get to
Exactly.
know people in the organization and let
Mhm.
them get to know you. You don't gotta be mixing up and friends in, because you have to keep a line, but let people know who you are and what you do.
That's it. You have to you have to say something. And I think that as HR professionals, we are the worst advocates for our own selves.
That's right.
We have a problem with voicing and saying what we do and why we do it and why it has value. And I think a lot of times it's because we don't know how to proactively or in a professional way state what our value proposition is. But the moment that you learn how to articulate that,
Mhm.
as you said, build those relationships, it makes it a lot easier for
Oh,
people to
yeah.
understand and appreciate what you do. The last organization I was in, when we did terminations or like redundancies, we had to do some redundancies. My CFO said to me, "Okay, Julie, I know I'm not going to see you until tomorrow. Do whatever you need to do." I any organization where I've had to deal with a very very difficult situation, I've always had a leader, blessed with a leader who would always say, okay, take some time for you to deal with that, process that, whether it's a day, 2 days, take that time because I know that this was a very difficult situation for you, but you have to articulate that. And it's not
Yes.
weakness to articulate it. It's not weakness to say to your leader, this was hard for you. You did it. You're going to do it. It's not that you're not going to do it, but you need to be able to articulate how it is going to make you feel
Yep.
after, and what you're going to need to do in order to recharge to come back the next day and do it again.
That's right. And that is part of the self care. That is part of the
Absolutely.
self care. Being honest with people and letting them know what your limits are. Because
Hmm.
if you don't know yet what your limit is, HR professionals, you need to find out, because you will always take on more than you can bear. Know what your limit is, and that is where you set your boundary.
Absolutely. And boundaries are important.
Oh,
Without boundaries, look, there are boundaries in track and
burnout is
field.
what happens if you
Yeah.
don't know your boundaries.
Imagine if there was no finish line at the end of a race. Then you'd have
Keep going till you
athletes running
drop.
around it. Yeah, run till they drop, right?
Yeah.
So, and we can't have that. Therefore, there's a starting point and a finishing point. Your
That's right.
starting point is the moment you enter the door. Your finishing point is when the work is over. And you have to learn to make that separation and distinction for yourself and set respectful and realistic boundaries. I have a do not disturb on my phone. My phone goes off at 9 p.m. Do not disturb. I do not ask. I don't receive calls, WhatsApp messages, text messages, emails, nothing. They sit and they stay until 5 a.m. Then I have my phone set on vibrate so that at 5 a.m. when it does go off and all that, I'd be hearing beep, 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 beep. In the end, what I hear, all I hear is burp, burp, burp because it's vibrating, right? Soon to set that to silent. But if you really want to contact me in the event of an emergency and you don't, and you know my home number, you call me at home. Outside of that, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. belongs to me, and I put that phone on do not disturb. 6 a.m. I am doing mindfulness. I am reading. I am preparing for eating a breakfast, preparing my day. All of those things are very,
the me time.
Your
the me
youth
time. The me
is
time.
very, very important. Very, very important. But we have to advocate that for ourselves and set very realistic boundaries for ourselves with our leaders.
Yes.
So many times I hear HR professionals say, oh, my boss emailed me at 6 o'clock, or my boss emailed me at 9 o'clock. Oh, and you answered? Why? But
Exactly.
then
Might know better. I'm off the clock.
You're already setting a pattern of you're allowing them to encroach on your boundaries.
Yeah,
Set the realistic boundaries.
And do it early.
Yes.
When you are starting to build that relationship, set your boundaries then. So you manage expectations. People would know not to message you at 6 o'clock because they're not going to get you. Or they won't expect an answer to the following day because they know you are off the clock.
Exactly.
Simple.
But if you
mine know very well.
Yeah, but if you're fretting to respond, and I find that happens very early in your HR career, you're fretting to respond. Your mindset is, oh my God, my boss is emailing me at 9 o'clock. They must want something. Let me just respond to this. And then it turns into, well, let me just do that. And let me just, no.
I tell people all the time, no one has died. The place is not burning. It can wait. And that's it. But I'm at a different stage of my career, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe when I was lower down, I might have, but actually no, I kind of thought that too. Because it was like, it can wait.
Yeah.
I'm not running my blood to water, as it were, for something that can wait.
No.
Because what is important or a top priority to one person really isn't your top priority. Exactly. Because when you look at the flip side, when you want something from them, they make you wait.
Exactly. Exactly. It's almost like when, the utility company, you have a problem with your utility. You pay that bill because if you don't pay that bill, they're going to snap it off. But the minute you got a problem with that service, they're going to take their sweet time before they respond and give you what you need, right? For us as HR professionals, we really have to set those boundaries and make sure that we set them very early in our working relationships with our people who we are reporting to. I strongly believe that, because otherwise we create unrealistic expectations that are not sustainable, which then lead to our burnout. So we really need to get better at that. So I think we've already mentioned a bit of these, but let's tips that you have for HR professionals struggling with self-care practices right now. I think your list of care practices was awesome.
Well, but for anybody, checking with yourself, really get used to doing that. Because if you check in with every day is not going to be a great day. Every day is not going to be a 7 or 8. But checking with yourself so you know how to manage your energy levels and your mood throughout the day. And schedule everything. Please, even the gym time, the break time, schedule everything, because you have to know, you gotta know what you're doing at any given moment. You can't be flitting from pillar to post. That it is not sustainable.
No.
And put yourself first. Take regular breaks, because that is how you avoid burnout. Now they talk about screen breaks. Every 20 minutes, you should be looking away from your screen for at least 20 seconds. Every half hour, you should be getting up and stretching, because you see all this tension that comes in your neck. That's because you're sitting, hunching over, sitting badly, and doing this. Because when we're working hard on our screens, we tend to sit for long periods of time, and we just get up to go to the printer or something else. And I mean, and all the other stuff I talked about already. Boundaries, learn to
Yep.
say no, build your support networks, connect with other people in the community, because don't feel, especially people who do standalone roles, don't
Yeah.
feel you're the only person going through this. Somebody probably has dealt with whatever issue you are facing that you're trying to
Correct.
resolve. Tap into your HR communities.
Absolutely.
And if it's not locally, it is internationally. We are in the age of technology now. So
Mhm.
you can find a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, something.
Absolutely.
Somebody dealt
Yeah.
with this already. Don't
Already.
try to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Somebody has dealt with it.
Absolutely.
Somebody somewhere has dealt with this. Trust me. And
Absolutely.
if not, you use what we like to call the common sense approach. So apply some good common sense and just do the right thing. But look, but by all means, just be kind to yourself.
Hmm.
You know, that's it. Don't expect the world, especially we are still dealing with a pandemic. So I do not know who's calling my house, but that's a by the by. My phone does not normally ring.
No,
Apologies, folks.
that's okay. That's okay. These
So
things
I
happen
was
all the time.
saying, yeah, so I was saying, we're coming out of pandemic. Be patient with yourself. You're not going to be as switched on as you used to be pre-pandemic. So be patient with yourself, ease yourself back into it. Some people are now going back into a physical workspace. Some people are doing hybrid. Some people are still working from home, like me, since the 23rd of March, 2020. So we are all dealing with all sorts of different things.
Yep.
So, just be kind to yourself and show yourself some grace, because these are unprecedented times. We
Yep.
have never experienced anything like this
Nah,
before. And there is no blueprint for this. Whatever rule book they had has been thrown out. Take it one day at a time.
that's it. And one thing at a time.
Yep.
I could not have asked for you to give any better advice. Thank you so much for sharing that,
You are
Julie.
welcome.
I want to ask you this. Now we talk about HR supporting themselves and their self care and so on. I want to go back to the data that I mentioned before. So I was reading a couple reports, but one from
Mm.
Hire Tools stood out to me recently, where they talked about some of the challenges that HR professionals will be facing going forward. And I was really surprised to see well-being ranked at like 17%. So it was really
Yeah.
low. Every time I read a report about where HR prioritizes well-being, from CHR roles to down to VPs, I feel so distraught that
Yeah.
we're still in a space where we are not prioritizing self-care and well-being. What advice do you have for HR when it comes to employee well-being and support? Remembering we are employees too. What can we do to prioritize this, get this prioritized better?
First off, HR professionals, lead by example. So, all the things you want people to do to improve their well being, you need to be doing yourself and consistently. Encourage the leadership to have health and well-being as part of the organizational culture. It has to embed the culture. It has to permeate right through the organization. It has to be part of the corporate agenda. It can't be just something you do every once in a while. It has to be a part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, give employees a voice and find out what it is they really want from the organization to support them, because what works in the company of your friends might not work where you are, because not everybody wants a corporate gym. Not
Yep.
everybody wants whatever somebody else is doing. Find
Yep.
out what people want.
Mm-hmm. Ask the people.
Now, there you go. So be preventative. This is what it's all about. Be proactive and preventative, and whatever you implement, make sure that it is preventative. Have an employee assistance program. It needs to be independent and confidential. People are not going to use it if they think it can be tied to them and their identity. Work with specialist partners like myself. who can help you to develop health and well-being programs and strategies. And
Mm-hmm.
that is part of how HR can support employees on their well-being journey.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I want to say, Tynesha just chimed in and said, practice
Yeah,
what you preach.
that's right.
You are so right, Tynesha. And I'm actually going to add to that, practice what you preach or change your speech.
That's a good one. I like that.
Period. Period.
Yep.
You started off by telling us about tapping into resources and practitioners who can help you with well-being. So tell us
Mm.
about 246 King Consulting. Why you decided to create this company and what do you do?
All right. So 246 King Consulting is my consultancy and it promotes health and well-being, tailored health and well-being strategies and programs for organizations. I also offer mental health awareness training. And that is a nutshell of what I do. Now, why I decided to do this. I benefited from coaching late 2016, 2017. Remember that rut and everything I was talking about? It was
Yeah.
time to get out of the rut.
Mm-hmm.
So my coach really forced me to answer some tough questions and do some introspection.
Mm-hmm.
So then I realized, okay, let's look at what I can specialize in and what I'm good at and what I would want to offer as far as a consultancy goes. And I settled on absence management, employee health and well-being. So, and also as I said earlier, my origin story, I recognize managers, they needed help and support to manage absence, and they really didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
So I looked at getting additional training, and I also did specific training or qualifications on mental health as well. So
Uh-huh.
I incorporated all of that into 246 King Consulting, and I launched April 2018, and
And
I'm
here
still
you
on
go.
that journey.
Awesome. And I'm so glad that you're here and still sharing your knowledge and your experience with the world because we need more of that. So thank you for taking that coaching journey
Yes,
to
the
get
coaching
to the
journey.
point of where you are because I feel like, and again, an HR professional taking a coaching journey,
Mm,
just putting it out there, people, the importance and recognizing it for myself as an HR professional who has, I'm a coach, but I have coaches as well
yeah.
because I couldn't exist without them and I couldn't exist without my therapist either. So shout out to all of them. But I
I let me say this. Therapy is one of the best gifts you could give yourself as an adult because childhood lasts forever and the trauma that we carry comes from our childhood.
mm-hmm,
Tap it, go and deal with that, please, because it gets heavier as
absolutely,
you get older.
absolutely.
Find a good therapist and work through your stuff.
Especially with your workplace trauma. Like I feel like that's really,
That's
really
the psychologist in me speaking, because I am a trained occupational psychologist.
there you go.
So
There you go. There you go. And you heard it twice. I tell you every single time we do this that the hour just comes up really quickly.
I know.
Any final comments, any final recommendations that you have on this topic of well-being in the workplace and as we return to work as HR? Jolie.
um, yeah, be gradual with it. Don't expect that you're going to perform at the level that you used to. It is going to take time, and you matter more than anybody else. So don't let anybody guilt trip you into thinking you have to work what Donna said, the 50 to 60 hours a week, or all the other nonsense that they would have expected before. This is a brand new you now. So and then prioritize your health and well-being. If you weren't doing it before, do it now. If you weren't consistent before, get consistent now. This is time to change perspective because this pandemic experience has changed our perspective. I lost family members during this pandemic to COVID, and it has changed my perspective. I look at the world differently now. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to look at what it is we want and work towards that. I said before, show yourself some grace, be kind to yourself. And as HR professionals, let's get the respect that we deserve, because we deserve it, because we have carried organizations and worked flat out for over 16 months. So let's go there and be our best advocate.
Wow. Am I on mute? No, I'm not. Okay.
No,
I have muted myself before. Thank you so much, Jolene, for
you are
sharing your
welcome.
insights, your experience. It's always great to have you in my HR circle. I'm so blessed that you are part of that. And I know you talked about having your network and having your support to
Mm.
help you through your HR career. And I must say, you have helped me in so many ways over my.
Have I? Well, that's good.
And definitely appreciate it. So I know that the audience today would definitely be appreciative of everything that you were able to share with us today. And I'm sure that at some point in time, you will be back in the seat
Yes.
having conversations with me again. So thanks again.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. If you just passed through, if you're catching us on the replay, I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. Please feel free to leave a comment, even if you caught us on the replay. I will make sure to go back and respond to every comment. I do my best to do that every single week, just so that you know that what you shared with us in the comments mattered to all of us. And I'm sure that Jolene is going to do the same. The
Yes.
very same. Okay, so we are at the end of our show for today, but I want to let you know who is coming up next. So, coming up next week will be my dear friend, also in my HR circle, Andy Storch. And Andy wrote a book called Own Your Career, Own Your Life. And we are going to be talking about how you can own your career in HR next week. I am a huge fan of Andy. He is a talent development expert and he always has his own podcast, is always sharing his insights, interviewing amazing guests. But Andy recently went through his journey of recovering from cancer. And we're going to talk a bit about that as an HR professional and what that experience has been for him and the support that he's received throughout his journey of healing. And I also hope that we'll be able, if you have any questions for Andy, I'm sure that he's going to be happy to answer them if you have them. If you want to be a part of the conversation, you know where to find me. You can connect with me here, send me a DM. You know I'm always on LinkedIn, or you can send an email to contact us at hr@heart.co. Let me know what you want to talk about, and I will be happy to engage you in a conversation on Magnifying HR Voices. I believe every voice has the right to be magnified. And last but not least, do you have your copy of Confessions of an HR Pro? Stories of Defeat and Triumph. If you do not have your copy, please go get one. I promise you, it is filled of experiences of HR professionals just like this. It's one of the reasons why I created Magnifying HR Voices, because I wanted us to recognize as HR professionals, you are not alone. And if you never felt like you had community before, I hope that you sense that you have community here through Magnifying HR Voices on LinkedIn. So, with that being said, I look forward to seeing all of you here again next week to learn how you can own your HR career and own your life. Thank you once again, Jolene, for joining me today.
Welcome.
And I will see you again on another episode of Magnifying HR